Let me tell you something after 60 odd years on this planet. The secret to Thanksgiving isn't the perfect turkey. It's making it out of the kitchen alive. And my kitchen, it's been a battlefield. For most people, Thanksgiving is about gratitude and family. For me, it's about crisis management, creative problem solving, and knowing the number for a pizza place that delivers on a holiday. My name is Henry, and these are my confessions from the culinary front lines. Over the decades, I've committed every kitchen sin imaginable, turning potential triumphs into inedible tragedies. I've discovered new and exciting ways to disappoint my family and test the limits of their love. These aren't just mistakes, they're legends. They're the stories that get told and retold every year, usually as a cautionary tale to the younger generation who think they can just waltz into a kitchen on the fourth Thursday of November, armed with nothing but optimism and a celebrity chef's recipe. They'll learn. Oh, they always do. But they'll never have stories quite like mine, because to fail on this level, you need a special combination of bad luck, overconfidence, and a complete inability to learn from past experiences. So, pull up a chair. Forget the Norman Rockwell painting. I'm here to give you the unvarnished truth of what happens when a man, a bird, and a high-pressure holiday collide. Let's travel back to 1978. I was a younger man then, brimming with the kind of unearned confidence only a 30-something with a new house and a fancy food magazine subscription can possess. This was going to be the year. My wife, bless her heart, had always handled Thanksgiving, but I decided it was my turn to take the helm, to prove my mettle, to roast a turkey so magnificent that bards would sing of it for generations. My first mistake, and trust me, it was the first of many, was pure ambition. I didn't just want a turkey, I wanted a pterodactyl. I went to the butcher and bought the biggest bird they had. This thing was colossal. It had its own gravitational pull. I lugged it into the house, my back groaning in protest, and presented it to my wife like a proud hunter. She just stared at it, then at our oven, then back at the bird, a flicker of doubt in her eyes that I, in my hubris, completely ignored. I stashed the behemoth in our chest freezer and promptly forgot about it. Thanksgiving morning arrived, and I bounded into the kitchen, ready to make history. My wife was already there, nursing a coffee with a look of gentle concern. "Henry, dear," she began, "did you remember to take the turkey out to thaw?" I froze. Thaw? Thawing was for the unprepared. "Of course," I lied, a bead of cold sweat tracing a path down my temple. I sauntered out to the garage, my heart hammering against my ribs. I lifted the lid, and there it was, the great white turkey. It wasn't just frozen, it was fossilized. A 22-pound block of cryogenic poultry. My wife took one look and said, "We have a problem." "Nonsense," I declared, my voice a few octaves higher than usual. "It's just a little firm." Turns out this is a shockingly common mistake, so I guess I was just joining a proud, forgetful tradition. My first plan was brute force. Hot water in the sink. The water just bounced off its icy carapace. It was like trying to melt an iceberg with a squirt gun. Plan B was where things got weird. I got my wife's hairdryer. There I was on Thanksgiving morning, pointing a 1200-watt styling tool at a frozen turkey, moving it back and forth like I was giving it a blowout. The kitchen filled with a bizarre smell of singed plastic and poultry-scented steam. My wife just stood in the doorway, shaking her head. After an hour of this, the bird was still a rock. A slightly damp rock, but a rock nonetheless. It was then I had my grandest, most idiotic idea. A warm bath. "Honey," I called out, "I need the bathtub." I wrestled this slippery 22-pound turkey cycle up the stairs and heaved it into the tub. I turned on the warm water, creating a little poultry spa. My 5-year-old son peeked in and asked, "Is the chicken having a swim?" I checked on my patient every 15 minutes, but time was ticking away. The guests would be here in hours. The USDA, as I'd learned many years later, would call this a terrible idea, a welcome mat for bacteria. Apparently, the danger zone for food is a real thing, and I had created a 5-star resort right in it. Finally, I declared it thawed enough. It wasn't. The extremities were pliable, but the core was solid granite. I shoved it into the oven and cranked the heat, thinking more fire would solve the ice problem. For 4 hours, the house smelled of burnt skin. When the thermometer finally registered something approaching a safe temperature, I declared it done. I presented the bird on the dining room table. It looked dramatic. The skin was deep, carbonized black. My father-in-law was given the honor of carving. He placed the fork in the breast, brought the knife down, and scrape. The knife hit something solid. He tried again. Same result. The outside was charcoal, but a half-inch below, the turkey was as raw and frozen as when I'd pulled it from the freezer. There was a stunned silence. Then my brother-in-law piped up, "Well, Henry, looks like you've cooked us a turkey popsicle." The room erupted in laughter. My grand debut was a disaster. We ended up eating side dishes and an emergency ham my wife had, thankfully, bought. That night, she found me staring at the defeated carcass. She handed me a slice of pumpkin pie and said, "Don't worry, dear. There's always next year." If only she knew. That wasn't an ending. It was a prologue. You'd think after 2 decades of failures, I might have learned a thing or two about simplicity. You would be wrong. By 1998, I was still chasing that perfect Thanksgiving. This year I decided the mark of the master would be the gravy. A rich, velvety, lump-free river of deliciousness. I had a new recipe involving cognac. I was ready to become a gravy guru. The day started off well. The turkey was roasting beautifully. I was feeling smug. Turkey out, resting, gravy time. I placed the roasting pan over 2 burners, the heat sizzling the glorious brown bits. I poured in the cognac. A dramatic plume of flame erupted, singeing my eyebrows. I felt like a rock star. I added the broth and began whisking like a man possessed. But the gravy wasn't a velvety river. It was a lumpy, muddy creek bed. Panic set in. Lumpy gravy was for peasants. I whisked harder, faster. The lumps mocked me. I needed a better weapon. And then I saw it. The immersion blender. I would not just break the lumps. I would obliterate them. I grabbed the blender, plunged it into the murky depths, and hit the power button. For a glorious second, I felt the vibrations of victory. I was saving Thanksgiving. And then, in my hubris, I tilted the blender just a fraction of an inch. The spinning blade broke the surface. It was a gravy volcano. A brown geyser erupted with the force of a pressure washer. A tidal wave of hot, fatty, cognac-infused liquid shot upwards and outwards, painting my kitchen in 50 shades of brown. Time slowed. I watched, horrified, as a perfect arc of gravy hit the ceiling, leaving a Rorschach test of failure dripping down. It splattered the pristine white cabinets, the backsplash, and me, soaking my Kiss the Cook apron. A fine mist of gravy settled over everything. The fruit bowl, the toaster, the mail. My dog, Buster, thought this was the greatest thing that had ever happened. He immediately began helping to clean the floor, his tail wagging so hard his whole body wiggled. The kitchen door swung open and my wife walked in, followed by my notoriously critical mother-in-law, Eleanor. They stopped dead, their mouths agape. They surveyed the scene. Me, covered in gravy, the dog, ecstatically licking the floor, the long, sad drips running down the walls. Eleanor slowly raised one perfectly sculpted eyebrow. My wife just sighed, a deep, weary sigh that contained 20 years of my kitchen disasters. "Henry," she said, her voice eerily calm, "what did you do?" I was smoothing, I mumbled, holding up the gravy-drenched blender as if it were Exhibit A. The cleanup was an ordeal. For years, on humid days, you could still smell a faint, savory aroma, and on the ceiling, no matter how many times we painted, a faint, brownish stain remained, a permanent monument to my failure. We had canned gravy that year. It was smooth, consistent, and utterly soul-crushing. As I sat at the table, I made a solemn vow. Next year, I would simplify. If hearing about my complete failure to control a simple sauce is making you smile, maybe feeling a little better about that one time you overcooked the green beans, then you're in the right place. If you're enjoying these tales of my culinary incompetence, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It lets me know there are other people out there who appreciate a good disaster story. It's cheaper than therapy, and frankly, a lot more entertaining. So go on, give it a click. Now, where were we? Ah, yes, my solemn vow to simplify. Let me tell you how that went. After the gravy apocalypse, I decided to change my strategy. The problem wasn't my skill, it was my focus. The solution? I needed to do everything perfectly. This was the early 2000s, the dawn of the celebrity chef on TV. I saw them whip up a dozen dishes in 30 minutes and thought, I can do that. What I failed to account for were the magic television elves who do all the chopping and cleaning. I had no such elves. I spent the week planning an epic menu. Sweet potato casserole with a 3-stage pecan crust. Green bean casserole with a from-scratch mushroom cream sauce. Not one, not two, but 3 types of stuffing. Sausage and sage, cornbread and jalapeno, and an artisanal oyster stuffing. Plus, roasted Brussels sprouts, creamed onions, and glazed carrots. I was planning to conduct a culinary orchestra. What I actually conducted was a train wreck. The chaos began. Thanksgiving morning. My grand plan required at least 3 different oven temperatures. My oven, being a simple single-chambered appliance, could only provide one, a logistical hurdle I had somehow overlooked. So began the great oven shuffle. I was constantly opening the door, pulling things out, putting things in, and losing precious heat each time. Meanwhile, the stovetop was a war zone. Every burner was occupied. A pot of potatoes boiled over. The mushroom sauce threatened to burn. I was a whirlwind of panicked energy. Guests started to arrive around 3 p.m., the scheduled dinner time. They walked into a house that smelled not of a welcoming feast, but of stress and slightly burnt onions. Almost ready, I'd call out with a manic grin. And the potatoes. Oh, the potatoes. In my haste, I overmixed them, creating a thick, viscous wallpaper paste, a gluey, starchy morass that clung to the spoon with the tenacity of a barnacle. But there was no time to fix it. The turkey was finally done hours late. It needed to rest, but every square inch of counter space was covered. I ended up putting it on a chair in the corner, covered in foil, like it was in time out. At 7 p.m., I realized the sweet potato casserole was still just a bowl of mashed sweet potatoes. The from-scratch green bean casserole was a lukewarm, congealed mess. We finally sat down to eat at 9:30 p.m. The turkey, which had rested for nearly 3 hours, was cold. The mashed potatoes had the consistency of industrial adhesive. The only thing perfectly hot was the sweet potato casserole, which emerged from the oven as we were finishing our main course. My wife praised the ambitious scope of the meal. My father-in-law picked at his cold turkey and said, "Well, Henry, it's certainly a lot of food." It was a failure of project management on a spectacular scale. I had learned another valuable lesson. The enemy of a good Thanksgiving is the pursuit of a perfect one. As we ate our store-bought pumpkin pie, my daughter patted my arm. "It's okay, Dad. The sweet potatoes are so good. They're almost like a dessert." They weren't a dessert. They were so late they were practically for Christmas. A few years passed. I scaled back my ambitions and aimed for competence. One year, everything seemed to be going perfectly. Deceptively so. This was the year of the great giblet incident. It all started so well. The turkey was thawed. The menu was simple. I was whistling as I prepped the bird, seasoned it, and slid it into the oven. I sat down with a coffee, feeling like the king of my domestic domain. About an hour in, a peculiar plasticky smell began to waft from the kitchen. I ignored it, but the smell intensified into a house-filling stench. A thin blue-gray haze snaked its way into the living room. "Henry, is something burning?" my wife asked. "It's fine," I said, a little too quickly. "Just some robust caramelization." The smoke detector disagreed. "Beep, beep, beep." The dog started barking frantically. This was bad, very bad. Thanksgiving is, I've since learned, the peak day for home cooking fires, so I was in good, if unfortunate, company. Unattended cooking is the leading cause, and while I hadn't left it unattended, I had clearly been attending to the wrong things. My brother-in-law, Dave, sprang into hero mode, grabbing the fire extinguisher. "Dave, no!" I yelled, picturing my beautiful smoky turkey blasted with corrosive white powder. I wrestled it from his grasp. With a dish rag over my mouth, I cracked open the oven door. A thick, putrid cloud engulfed me. My eyes watered instantly. The smell was overwhelming. Melted plastic and incinerated organ meat. When the smoke cleared, the problem was horribly apparent. There, sizzling in a pool of molten fat, was a small, charred, melted plastic bag. The giblets. In my state of calm competence, I had forgotten the first rule of turkey prep. Check the cavity. I had roasted the bird with the plastic-wrapped bag of heart, liver, and neck still tucked neatly inside. It had melted, releasing toxic, poultry-scented fumes. We threw open all the windows. The house looked like it was being fumigated. The smell lingered, an olfactory monument to my stupidity. But what about the turkey? It looked fine, but had it absorbed the essence of burnt plastic? I cautiously carved off a slice. It smelled vaguely of a factory fire. We held a family council. Dave was firmly in the throw it out, it's a biohazard camp. My teenage son argued that a little melted plastic never hurt anyone. Hunger won out. We decided to eat the parts furthest away from the toxic event. Every bite was a psychological adventure. Was that a hint of sage or a note of polyethylene? The biodome turkey, as it was christened, was certainly my most memorable. And from that day forward, the first question asked every Thanksgiving is, "Henry, did you remember to take the bag out of the turkey?" So there you have it. A frozen turkey boat anchor. A gravy incident that required repainting the ceiling. A side dish marathon that ended at 10 p.m. And a biohazard situation that gave new meaning to smoked turkey. And that's just the highlight reel. I haven't even told you about the time I tried to deep fry a turkey and nearly set the garage on fire. A surprisingly common occurrence, or the year I used salt instead of sugar in the pumpkin pie. For 60-something years, I've battled Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving has usually won. But here's the funny thing I've learned through all this culinary carnage. None of it really matters. No one remembers the taste of the perfectly cooked turkey from that one year I somehow didn't mess up. But everyone remembers the unsinkable bird of 78. They all tell the story of the great gravy flood. These disasters, these magnificent, hilarious failures, have become the main course. The laughter that comes from remembering me with a hairdryer pointed at a turkey is a much warmer tradition than any perfectly executed meal could ever be. The stories are the secret ingredient. So, after all these years, I have finally discovered the secret to a perfect Thanksgiving. It's not in the brining or the basting. It's not about impressing anyone. The true secret is this: let someone else cook. But if you can't do that, just embrace the chaos. Know that when something goes wrong, and it will, it's not a disaster. It's the beginning of a really good story. Perfection is overrated. Memories are made from the glorious, funny moments when everything goes completely, utterly wrong. If these stories gave you a laugh, be sure to like and subscribe for more tales of well-intentioned failure. I've got a lifetime's worth. And now I want to hear from you. What's your most legendary Thanksgiving cooking disaster? Let me know in the comments. I guarantee I've probably done something worse. Happy Thanksgiving, and may your smoke alarms remain silent.